One of the big five, not to be confused with the Fab Four, personality traits is agreeableness. Agreeableness reflects the individual's tendency to develop and maintain pro-social relationships. Individuals high in this trait are more trustworthy, straightforward, altruistic, compliant, modest, and tender-minded. I mean, that sounds pretty good. So, what's the catch? Lose less scenarios. Sometimes in life, damage control is the aim, where win-win scenarios are not really on the table. When you have to make a decision that you know will hurt someone, but is necessary and right, it can pay to act quickly and not spend copious amounts of time worrying about it. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say you're a manager. No, let's be ambitious. Let's say you own your own company. Funds are scarce, and to make sure the company stays afloat, you need to be very careful about who you hire and keep. They need to be high performing and well suited to the job. But you have this one employee who is a lovely person, real salt of the earth, but they're just not good at their job, and it's fairly clear to you that you made a mistake to hire them in the first place. The best thing to do is to fire them as soon as possible, with precise reasons as to why. Did that sound harsh? Consider what often happens in these scenarios. In order to avoid the awkwardness of potential conflict, to pull away from the inevitably negative emotions, you wait to tell them. Maybe even, by virtue of your silence on the matter, passively indicate to them that everything is fine. Then, when you finally muster up the courage to pull the trigger, they are taken by surprise, shocked at the complete absence of any signs that there was a problem. They say, "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you give me a chance to improve?" You'd be surprised how many people have found themselves on one side of that scenario, or maybe even both. People who are highly agreeable thrive in situations where positive emotions are the barometer of success, or at least are highly correlated, where harmony, cohesion, and community win the day. This becomes a problem when those two things are disconnected, where the feelings, be they positive or negative, are independent from the metrics of success, when things need to be done regardless of the emotional impact. Saying no. No is such a gorgeous word. Despite the fact that being agreeable is clearly advantageous in many scenarios, one obvious drawback is the ability to say no to things. Something as simple as that momentary discomfort of saying that one syllable can often deter agreeable people from saying no to things that are clearly not good for them. This can manifest in taking on too many obligations, be that in the workplace or simply with friends and family. From what I've seen so far, both studying these traits and simply observing people in life, being agreeable is good most of the time. Disagreeable people are more confrontational, more competitive, can often place self-interest above the group interest. They're less likely to put themselves out for other people. They can lean towards being uncooperative and simply unfriendly, often being seen as argumentative or even untrustworthy. But there is one key thing that disagreeable people realize, and that is that sometimes conflict does more for progress than consensus does. Recently I've been watching, for the second time, the Michael Jordan and Chicago Bulls documentary on Netflix. There are parts where he's being completely belligerent and kind of bullying to his teammates. After losing for a few years in a row in the playoffs, he basically decides that he's going to make the practice sessions every bit as brutal, or even more so, than the big games they'll have to play. He's clearly a very disagreeable guy. When observing and analysing these situations, there is a fallacy that's easy to fall into. It's something akin to survivorship bias, or maybe winner's bias in this case. When you see that something turns out well and has good results, and you realise that some part of the process involved a questionable method, or just an unpleasant method, there's a tendency to think that those methods were somehow essential to the outcome. Now, obviously that's a flawed way to think. Nonetheless, I couldn't help but think that in this specific case, they won a lot more as the result of his disagreeable methods. There are plenty of impressive and important leaders that would rank very highly on the trait of agreeableness. But at the same time, there are also people on the other end of the spectrum. I think that most people would say agreeableness most of the time, with the ability to be disagreeable when needed. As some agreeable people have told me, they are agreeable up to a point, but if you cross their line, you'd realize that was a bad move. Let me know in the comments whether you know of any highly agreeable or highly disagreeable people, or maybe you are one of those two yourself. Also, if you are highly agreeable, I'm sure you will follow my advice to like and subscribe, but If you're disagreeable, what better opportunity to improve that trait? And also, like and subscribe.